Welcome to The Good Pod. Today, we're going to be talking about The Good Wife, Season 1, Episode 11, Infamy. I am one of your hosts, Jason Reed. With me, as always, my fantastic co-host, Marissa Garza. Marissa, you good?
I'm good. You good?
I'm good.
All right.
Listen, we were away last week, if you heard our announcement pod of us being out of pod last week. And, I mean, I'll just say, I wanted to podcast last week.
Oh, no.
But
Oh, no. Oh,
one of the
no.
people on this show
Oh, no,
had
no,
a
no.
previous engagement. They had to go to something called, what was it? Stationery Fest.
Yeah.
I believe is what it was called.
Jason. Yeah.
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 Which is an
People have
important
hobbies,
meeting.
okay? People have hobbies and they go to things and they hang out with other people who are nerdy about those things. And I was doing one of those things. But I would just like the record to show that I was not the one that was not ready for podcasting. I was ready for primetime player, okay? I was ready to go.
Yeah.
There were just
work gets in the
capitalistic
way
other
sometimes.
things that happened to other people on the podcast.
Work gets in the way sometimes, but on our normal times to podcast, that conflicted with Stationery Fest, Pen Con, or whatever you want to call it.
In New York. Oh, and also I went to the New York NBC studios and I got to see NBC Studios, and I got to see a sign that pointed to the set of Elsbeth. So I feel like
I was
close enough. I was close enough to I could track hours for this. This could be charged to the pod that doesn't exist in terms of any financial anything, but I could do it.
Well, I was going to say, Marissa, do you want to tell the folks how you failed this podcast?
Oh my God.
Because listen, Marissa sent me a text with a sign that said "This way to the Elsbeth set," and I said, Marissa, you gotta crash the set. You gotta get us some time with anyone. I'll take Wendell Pierce. I'll take Carrie Preston.
Let me just
I'll take
just
who
knock
plays
on the
Kaya.
door.
Let me just
knock on the door and see how it goes.
You have a grassroots podcast that just started that no one knows about except for our dedicated listeners that will get them no real press for this show. But you can explain that to them.
Well,
and I'm sure they'll come running.
And I'm sure, based on your extensive watching of The Good Wife and Elsbeth, you have enough legal knowledge to really help me out if I were to get into any major trouble, right? Yeah,
when they arrest you for trespassing, I'll take in a few. I'll put in Google, like, give me the Good Wife show episodes that deal with trespassing. I'll watch those and I'll be all set.
Yeah, just
be all set.
ChatGPT, my defense, and I think you'll be fine based on everything that happens. So I did see a sign. I was so close, everyone. I do apologize. I was not able to knock on the door because, first of all, they were just setting up for breakfast, and I don't think that anyone was there, but I was walking down the street on my way to the ferry, like, a real New Yorker. And
a real New Yorker.
And I was walking and I just saw the sign that said Elsbeth to set this way, and then it said breakfast, and I was like, oh, I could crash breakfast. But I told myself if they were going to be there the next day I would go back, but they were not there. But I will post said pictures to my Instagram so you can see the fun, exciting pictures of a sign if that's really something that you really want to see.
You could have eaten some scrambled eggs next to Elsbeth, or got some food with Kaya. Who knows?
Could have.
What could have happened?
It was really cool to see because they did pretty much block off, not like the whole street, but there were signs everywhere. Like, you knew that they were filming on this block, and they basically took up the whole block. So thinking about all the shows that I film in New York, I can only imagine what an actual day is like in the city. And pretty much everywhere we went, my sister and I were relating landmarks to places and television shows. So it was exciting to be in the city. And I do apologize to our fair listeners about my inability to snag an interview. But you know what? There's still time. Yeah. We can still do it.
We could have had it all. We could.
Oh boy,
that's all right. It's okay. We'll forgive you.
I'm sure. Thank you.
So yeah, sorry for not being here last week, folks. But listen, sometimes life gets in the way in many different instances. Before we get off of PenCon or Stationery Fest or whatever you call it, that one. Tell folks out there what your sister bought.
Oh, well,
How much you bought it for? Because
I
I'm still gobsmacked by
so
this.
here's the thing with stationery. There, just like any hobby, there's like, your elite, I don't know, collector's items, fancy pens. These are fancy pens. These are fountain pens. I also own a couple of these pens. And now my sister owns a sailor pen, which was a big deal. It's like a rite of passage in the stationery community to save up your money and get this type of pen that's north of $300.
Mm.
But I was explaining to Jason how it's very customizable, how things are made out of gold on the pen. This is not even the most expensive pen you could buy. There are pens that are over $1,000, but we did not buy any of those. We just bought, the semi expensive ones. But it's very nice pen. It's a very nice writing experience, a very nice pen. I highly recommend, if you are into pens, saving up your money and getting a fountain pen. And
I
Jason
have a
is going
pen.
to get a
I have a
pen.
pen. I have a pen right here. And you know what this was? This was free 99 from my company.
Jason,
So
though,
I also have
no.
pens.
What's going to happen though is like in a few months you're going to be curious and you're going to say, "Hey, Marissa, I think I need to upgrade my pens." And I will be there for you.
You have all the answers for me.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I mean, Stationery Fest 100% success for
Yeah,
Marissa.
it was fun.
And listen, if you know Marissa at all, you know Stationery Fest is something that she'd be down for. It's her jam. It's her thing. So happy for you that you got to
Thank
Stationery
you.
Fest and that you had a blast.
Thank
But
you.
time to get back to work. Time to
Yep.
talk about our show, The Good Wife. We're in episode 11. And listen, I just feel like every episode we just get stronger and stronger. Like this was
Oh
a
yeah.
another great episode that was very nuanced and particular. And I continue to marvel at the fact that these 2009, and we're going to point out that this episode actually takes place. It's the first one to take place in 2010. How in 2010 we're still looking at issues and things that we are dealing with smack dab right here in 2024. So some things are just timeless, and it's crazy to me to watch the show 14 years later still be relevant and things we're dealing with today.
Yeah, this episode in particular deals a lot with like the media landscape and what is a journalist and how does a journalist compare to a commentator and what responsibility do those people have? And we are still asking those questions, to your point, Jason, in 2024, and especially during a year like this, which is an election year. So it was interesting to see how they introduced this topic. This is like, I feel like one of the more meaty episodes we've seen when it comes to kind of demonstrating demonstrating the justice system and demonstrating these types of questions to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, and Duke Roscoe takes on the persona that we see on some news channels, and it makes you question: is this journalistic or is this for entertainment? Which I think is, I'm surprised it didn't delve a little more deeper into that aspect of it. So it's something that's really kind of like he's not a reporter; he's more of like a kind of entertainment personality. So I think that was very interesting to kind of see what people take as news and what people take as entertainment. So it really kind of dove deep into that layer of it. So it was really interesting to see, 14 years ago.
Yeah, it was. Did we want to go time travel back to 2010 and kind of see what was going on?
Yeah, we got some headlines from 2010 because as I said, this was January of 2010 when this premiered. So we got a few things happening in the world. We're still recovering as a global economy in 2010 to 2008 financial crisis. Of course, some of you probably was feeling that. I know
Well,
in my timeline, I was feeling that a little bit myself.
in this timeline, I'm feeling that a
In
little
this
bit
timeline,
for
yeah.
myself.
Funny how some things don't
Yeah,
change ever,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So this is also Barack Obama was in his first term as president of the United States, of course. The technology was anticipating the announcement of the first. In the technology world, they were anticipating the announcement of the first iPad, which would happen later that month. Like many things, I was a very late adopter to the iPad, mostly due to financial reasons and cost. So, I remember where I was when we first got the news of the first iPad. It's like, oh my gosh.
I remember I went to the Apple store. I was downtown in the city of Chicago and I was like, oh, I'm by the Apple store. So I went to the Apple store and I took a picture of me touching the iPad. And that was it. Like,
Yeah,
I was like, I touched it.
that's as close as we're getting to an iPad for a while. I mean, I think thinking of the costs of iPads now, which are
Hmm.
astronomical. Like, it was just something that was just like in my world of 2010, just like, yeah, probably not get an iPad for a long, long time. So that was interesting. Climate change and environmental issues are becoming increasingly prominent in global discussions.
Not much has
Again,
changed
we're
there.
still doing it. Ongoing conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq, dude, still in the middle of the war. So I mean, this is 2010s. We're about almost 9 years going strong in that war. There have been developments since then. In the world of pop culture, the number one song was Kesha, "Tick Tock."
Yeah.
It's in my head. Tick tock.
How prolific was she? Like, because we are definitely still talking about TikTok, but in a much like, because we are
Yeah, much
definitely
different.
still talking. And
Yeah,
she has
exactly.
also changed the lyrics of the song, has had like,
Yes.
was, I don't know, like a little bit of a fortune tell, but also an evolution in 2024.
Yes, exactly. Number one movie at the time was Avatar. Now, the journey of Avatar is so interesting because I remember when the Avatar first came out, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're planning sequels. It's going to be a two, three, four," and we got number two last year. Like,
Yeah.
in 2023. Like, that's when the second Avatar movie came out. So we had almost a 13-year gap to the second Avatar, and more Avatars incoming. They just announced, well, it was already announced, but they just gave more footage and stuff from the next Avatar, which will probably be out in like another year or two.
Can I confess?
Are you gonna say something that I might also be thinking? Well, you go ahead with yours, and I'll see if I
I
agree.
do not really love the Avatar.
Extremely overrated.
Yeah.
Avatar is extremely over. I do not get the hype at all. And I mean, when the first Avatar came out, it was like, oh my gosh, you have to see it on the IMAX screens. Like, it's one of the first movies to really use the IMAX technology. And now IMAX is just like, it's everywhere. It's just like a normal type of thing. And I feel like the second Avatar, it just really is kind of coasting on the coattails of the first Avatar. That's why it made so much money. But watching those movies, just like, it's fine. It's like,
Well, I feel like when Avatar, the first Avatar came out, I was all like, yes, let me go see this technological advancement. Let me go, because it was also in 3D. It was like the era
yes.
of the 3D movies coming out
Yeah.
as well. So I was like, okay, well, let me go see it. But the story, I didn't have a lot of connection to the story itself. And then I found out that James Cameron basically stole the story from Native people and didn't give credit to the natives about things. So then I had like a personal, like, I am not going to do anything. And then they decided to put it in Disney World. And I was like, this makes no sense. So Avatar has always just been really confusing to me. But I don't want to. I mean, this is coming from someone who went to Stationery Fest, so I'm not going to yuck anyone else's yum. If you
Nerd,
love
nerd,
Avatar,
nerd.
love the Avatar, but I much prefer Avatar: The Last Airbender to Avatar, the James Cameron version.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I definitely agree with that sentiment. Number one TV show at the time, American Idol.
Uh
Listen, I,
huh.
I think some of you may be surprised to learn that American Idol still comes on and it's still a thing. Ryan Seacrest still hosts it. American Idol, it took a hiatus for a while where it wasn't on TV, but then it came back on a different network. And I'm trying to, like, I think so. Katy Perry, Lionel Richie,
Now the nows.
yeah, now,
Yeah,
and is it Luke Bryan? Our judges now?
sure. I'll just say
So
yeah.
yeah, I'm sure many people will be surprised. No, American Idol is still on. It's probably like the number 20th show out there right now. It definitely not is in it's definitely not in its heyday as it was before. But yeah, that was kind of a snapshot of 2010, just to let you know where we are in the world as these episodes are happening. So Marissa, you want to take us through like the main case of the week? We'll do kind of parallel tracks, the case of the week, and then kind of the other storylines we have going on. But let's tackle the case of the week first.
Alrighty. So this week we were introduced to, I don't want to say our good friend, the commentary person known as Duke Roscoe, who basically is an outlandish TV commentator who accused a mother of killing her own child after she couldn't find her child, and he says that she was faking this call to the police and all of this stuff, and she ended up murdering her child. And this, of course, gave this woman so much stress, she ended up dying by suicide because of everyone was like walking around thinking that she had killed her kid. So the father was in this situation was suing the network to as is his right. As this is
Oh
right.
yes, of
I
course.
was like, I am on this guy's side. We do get introduced to the lawyer on the other side in a little bit of a saucy, sneaky way. Will is on the phone with her, and there are definitely multiple meanings happening to the words that he is saying to her. Um, like maybe we can make a special deal, or
Yeah, there's a lot of Will having to look around. He's talking on the phone with this lawyer. Like, I want to say something like a
yeah,
little naughty real quick. Like, you still got that tattoo on your back. Like, oh well, okay. And, like, you know, we've had a lot of Will's a dog, Will's at this, Will's at that. It's like, okay, starting to show a little bit, starting to see what's up.
well, and did you notice that like Alicia clocked it so
Oh
fast?
yeah. Hmm. She's looking. She's like, he looks real involved in that phone call
Yeah,
over there. What's
and it
going
was an
on there?
up and down look. It wasn't just like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna track you with my eye, like around the room. She was like looking
And like, you do
at
something
Will.
dirty over there, don't
Yeah,
you?
I was
I
like,
can sense it. I got the spidey sense going on.
well, it turns out that the firm does not want to go to trial here because even though, they want to fight for the rights of this father, Duke does have a very strong case with the First Amendment. Like, it's really hard to prove these cases wrong. However, Tim, the dad, really wants to continue going forward with it because he thinks his daughter's still alive. And the fact that his wife ended up murdering herself because of that was like not good. So,
Yeah, I mean, it really kind of pulls your heartstrings when they tell Alicia, like, Alicia, like, go in there and tell Tim that, you know, he should just take the settlement money that's being offered and just kind of forget about this.
this,
And Tim's just like, no, I want the people to know that my wife was innocent. I want to keep my daughter's name out there in the zeitgeist because I still think that she's alive. Like, my wife didn't kill her, so I want to keep her name in people's mouths and let people remember her and clear my wife's name. So it was very like you really felt for good old Tim here in his situation.
yeah. And I feel at the same time, this is a theme for Alicia this entire episode. Like, she's tired of being the client whisperer, for lack of a better term. It's like, oh, is there bad news? Send Alicia in. She'll be able to like tell a client or like hold the client's hand through these things. She was assigned on this case. Yes, but I do feel like there were a lot of people assigned on this case and they chose her to deliver this news.
Well, and I think her mindset is kind of like, you know, it feels like the people are doing the important work while I have to go and
Yeah.
be this person's shoulder to cry on, to be this sympathetic person while people are all around me doing the important actual law work here. So I can definitely see where she's coming from. And I love that a running gag throughout this episode is that at some point Kerry gets appointed to do the hand holding and he really sucks at it.
So bad.
So I love that running gag. It's going to pop up here in this episode. But yeah, and listen, we see a kind of a rare moment of frustration from Alicia here, where she's just like, she goes in and slams the door. She's like, I'm tired of being the freaking hand holder around here. Or people need to go, oh, Alicia, this person needs to have a soft ear to hear them out. Like, she wants to do like the real like
She
big
wants to be a
work. So
lawyer.
I don't
Yeah.
blame her. Yeah, I don't blame her for being frustrated.
Yeah. It turns out that like the firm put together this little clip that was very convincing to get the other side to come in to discuss the settlement. So everyone comes in except for Alicia's not attending this meeting because she has a side quest which we will talk about later on in the podcast, but she's pulled away to attend a like divorce hearing. But we are also introduced when the lawyers come in for the settlement to like Duke in person. We saw Duke on screen, but like the way that Duke walks into this law firm, demands special foods, all of the stuff, he's definitely thinking he's like not gonna be held accountable in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I loved how he entered this and he's like demanding things and he tells Will to get him some pineapple or something. And Will's like, yeah, can we get Mr. Roscoe some pineapple and a
And
bib? I was like, oh snap. Oh snap. Good one, Will. Good one, Will.
well, and he comes in and he's like, "Hey, network, if you give them any money, I'm gonna leave." And so I think this highlights like not saying that I want to sympathize with networks. But I do think this is a very common conversation that has to happen, is like people are pulling, they have a following and they can pull audiences away from different networks. And this is something that Duke recognizes. And he says, hey, look, if you are going to pay, if you're going to settle to keep this quiet and not stand up for me, then I'm going to leave and I will bring everyone with me, which can be like a financial hit to the network. So the network is
You
kind of got to do what he wants.
listeners, you heard that. Marissa is on the side of big
Oh
network. She's on the
boy.
side of big business. She's part of the man.
Yeah.
She's in on it. So you guys know
So
where Marissa
much.
stands. Yeah.
So much. That is my middle name, actually. Marissa Capitalism Garza. So this case is assigned to fan favorite Judge Abernathy, which led to some more levity throughout the entire case, which was fun to see. Judge Abernathy rules at the beginning of the case that Duke, like that Will has to prove that Duke must have known that the mom didn't kill her child and was careless with the facts. Like this is the basis in which he's going to use to rule this case. And this is a tough place to be in because it's not just like he didn't check his facts. It's like he has to know that he didn't check his facts, which is a little bit different.
Yeah, the burden of proof is definitely on our people's side to prove that Duke didn't, that he knew what he was reporting was a lie, and that Abernathy is so interesting because he, again, the first time we saw him, the same thing. He has to hedge. He has to kind of make up for the fact that everyone knows that he is a devout Democrat, so he has
Mm-hmm.
to like toe that line. He's so nervous of being labeled this Democrat judge that he has to, he really has to go overboard in placating the other side.
Yeah, he's all like, it's okay. We can have casual conversations. It's fine. No big deal. And later on, he says some other things. It's always fun to see Judge Abernathy try to wrestle with his moral standing and the job he's being asked to
Mhm.
do at the same time as a judge.
Yeah, you just see he does a great job of like showing you the the trouble he has parsing all that out.
Yes. Kerry and Kalinda are asked to go find this evidence that they're going to need to prove that Duke did not, or knew that the mom didn't murder her kid, and also he was careless with the facts. So Kalinda, of course, goes to Frank, who we had met in a previous episode at a gun range, which totally makes sense, and basically says like, hey, if I win this shootout, you're going to give me the 911 tape. And that's how she
I
gets
really
what she
thought
needs.
Yeah, I really thought Frank was like a one episode wonder, but Frank's back. I was like, oh, I'm surprised to see Frank again. I love the game of horse. Basically, they're playing with shooting things. Like, I do this shot, you have to follow it, and like of course, Kalinda goes straight for the private part of the of the target for her first shot. It's so hilarious, so fun.
Does this mean though that because he's shown up a second time, Jason, that you have watched Romeo plus Juliet, the early 2000s classic by Boz Lerman?
Yo, it's so weird how life works, and it's also probably partly the internet. But after we talked about this guy on our last show, or whatever show it was that he was on, on my Twitter feed, I get a clip
Yeah.
of that Romeo and Juliet movie with this guy in it.
Yeah.
And I texted to Marissa, was like, this is weird. This is crazy. Like, I feel like the internet heard me talking about him on our podcast. Was like, here you go. It's so weird, so odd. And then of course Marissa's gonna be like, oh hey, does that mean you're
I
gonna
mean,
watch Romeo and Juliet now? I'm like, no,
when the
probably
universe
not.
gives you sign, Jason, you can't ignore it. Like it's just going to keep coming up until you do it. So I say if you see him one more time, you just got to bite the bullet. Pun intended.
Yeah,
I'll watch it
I'm
with
good.
you. We can do a pod about it. It'll be fun.
We can do a watch
Yeah.
along.
It'll be fun.
Maybe,
The-
maybe.
Carrie, this is when Carrie's put on the task of like basically babysitting the witness, and he is so bad at that. He's like, I lost an uncle once. Tim has lost his kid and his wife, and all Carrie can say is like, I lost an uncle who had a wife that was my aunt. Like it was so
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, I know it's tough, man. I had an uncle. He died of an ulcer. Like, bro, my wife just committed suicide because she was accused of killing our child. Do
Yeah.
not try to relate with me in this manner whatsoever. Like,
I have to hand it
I just
to Tim because he just like ignored him, which was great.
yeah.
Like he could have gone taken some hands to Kerry at that point.
Like, Kerry, how are you this bad at being like a person with compassion? It's like, how would a normal human act? That's what I'm going to try and do. So what should I do? This guy's relative died. Maybe I should talk about my relative that died. That'll work, right? That's what humans do.
I think it shows that, like, you know, life experience counts for some things, can help you in some
Yeah.
ways that Kerry doesn't necessarily have right now.
But I think Alicia would have been is someone that knows not to
Right.
pull that card.
Right.
Like, she knows not to do that. She knows to relate in some other way.
Right.
Like, talk about how being a parent is important. Talk about how having kids is important.
But
Blah blah
Kerry
blah.
doesn't have those cards. Like, he doesn't have
Yeah, he
those
doesn't.
cards to play. So he's got to use what he has. And it could have been like he could have talked about the Sox or the Cubs. Like, he could have found
Yeah,
some other way to connect with this man who probably doesn't want to talk about baseball right now. But, maybe
yeah.
just make it about him, make it about Tim, and not make it about Kerry and how he has no empathy for people.
Yeah, Carrie just finds it hard to relate on a human level to anyone. He's a stats and pattern
Yes.
machine. He's a brown noser. He just doesn't understand, And listen, he's still a young guy, right?
Yeah.
He hasn't, like you said, he hasn't had that life experience to know how to deal with someone that has gone through this terrible tragedy in his life, where his daughter's gone, his wife is gone. He has no idea
It's like
how to handle that.
5 universes away from where Kerry is
Yeah,
at the moment. Well, while Kerry and Kalinda are looking for evidence, Will is taking the opportunity to meet with opposing counsel in a non traditional setting known as the hotel
very.
room.
Very. And it's interesting because we talked about on our, one of our last episodes about how Will is like shooting hoops with the judges, and
Mhm.
does that pose some sort of moral or ethical issue? And I have to wonder the same thing here. Like, you're in a hotel room with opposing counsel, definitely about to get in your briefs, if you know what I
Get
mean.
out of your briefs.
Yeah, getting out of his briefs. So I just had like, is there some line that Will should be drawing here? Like, is this cool? Like, if someone found out about this, would there be steps taken? I don't know. I'm very curious to know, like, what the official in the real world, what the official thing would be here.
Yeah, if there are any lawyers out there, I'd love to know, because I also wonder if this is a symptom of 2010 versus 2014, where in 2010, this might not have been seen as super unethical or super gray area, where in 2024, we have very distinct
Mhm.
conversations and lines around these things. And so I wonder how that has changed. But I'm like Carrie in the situation. I have no way to relate to any part
Like,
of this
it
conversation.
seems like, just to my normal, like, dumb brain, it seems like that would be something that would probably not
Yeah,
fly.
yeah.
But who knows? I don't know.
But I feel like I've also been watching. I haven't been cheating on the show, but I have been watching Suits at the same time.
How dare you?
Well, I have a lot of free time, so I've been watching Suits, and I'm learning that, like, and it happens on the show too. Lawyers don't want to go to trial. There's a lot of risk that comes to trial. Like, Diane says it in this episode herself. Is like, going to trial is very risky. There's a lot of variables that they can't control. So basically, a lot of work is done making deals. And I feel like I'm
Mhm.
not justifying Will's deal making in the situation, but I feel like that door is always kind of a gray area, because he might be leading her on. He may be like doing all this stuff, or she might be leading him on to say, like, to bring him to a different side of the table. But I do think that these type of conversations happen all the time to keep people out of trial.
Yeah,
Whether
but I
they're
mean,
happening in a hotel room, probably not.
right. I mean, having a lunch meeting to talk about
Yes.
settlement of the case, possibly, and then go into a hotel room to confab with our clothes off is a totally
Like,
different bag of
yeah.
worms. Yeah,
Well, and you can tell that these two people have history, because what was her
yeah.
name? Emily?
Yes,
Emily.
Emily is the name, which I had to look up because, again, this show does a really bad job of introducing us to some characters. If they just deem the characters are not that important, they won't even bother giving them a name. So I was like, I found out her name's Emily. She's played by Kat Foster, who was, and this, as we talked about, the show is full of people that are like, oh, I know that person. It's another, like, I know that person who isn't exceedingly famous, but she is a known person. So yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Emily is her name, and yeah, we see a tattoo on her back. There's not much explanation of the tattoo, just that it's
Will
something
has
that
seen it
Will has
before.
known about it. Yeah, he has seen it, he knows of it, and it's on her back. So it's not something that is extremely well known if you just looked at her with clothes on. So obviously Will has seen this, and Will's like, how far down does it go? I don't remember how far down it goes. Like, oh, like Will flirting and Will being like in his bedroom thing ways is kind of icky. It's kind of icky. It's
It
kind of
is
weird.
very cringy. I mean, unless it's with Alicia for some reason. But like I feel like
The non flirting that Will and Alicia does is so much
yes.
hotter
Yes.
than what this
This
is.
is so
It's so
cringy.
weird.
Well, and
Yeah,
she also like knows about his current sexual activity. It's like,
yeah.
"Oh, you've been in a drought for a couple of months." And I'm like, "How do you know this? Like what is going on?"
I want to know more about that. Is that like because she said it, and Will? I don't know if Will confirmed. He kind of confirmed it. Like, oh yeah, who told you that? So is Will saving himself for Alicia? Like, what is going on?
Well, I think the impact of Alicia being in Will's life is getting him to like really think about his ways and how he wants to show up. Like, I feel like he
Listen,
wants to be worthy of someone like Alicia, and that means he has
he,
to change behavior.
well, he was about to blow it, if you will, in this moment before what happens.
This is true. But he is interrupted by a phone call from Diane who says, "Hey, turn on the TV. Duke's got some stuff to say." And Duke, who is played by Craig Bierko, who is known from Unreal. Jason, this is a show you know that I do not know.
Yeah, so Unreal was it's kind of a spoof on the production of The Bachelor. It was about a
Oh,
production of
yeah.
like that universe's version of The Bachelor, and it was more about the producers of those shows and how they manipulate contestants. It was a scripted show, but it was a show about that type of production. It was a really it was a fun, interesting show. It kind of nose dove in like the latter part of its run, but he was like he was a really sleazy producer or creator of the show in that universe. So that's where I'm most familiar with him, but he's been in like a thousand other things.
Well, the sleaziness is something that stuck with him because
Does does real good. He does real good
he's
with the
really good with
sleazy.
that. Yeah, he is
Yeah.
here on TV showing the picture of Will and Alicia from when they went to the hotel in a previous case, insinuating that Will and Alicia were there for other reasons, and also doesn't really refer to Alicia as a lawyer, only refers to her as Peter Florrick's doesn't even say Peter Florrick. It's this like prostitute loving, toe sucking ex husband. So doesn't
Oof.
even give Alicia any respect on her name at all, and basically tells everyone, which makes it real awkward for both Will and Alicia when they go to work the next day.
Yeah, that was real funny. Them both having to defend themselves the next day at work.
It turns out that Frank comes through for Kalinda and provides the 911 tape. And then there's this really funny scene where both sides are kind of arguing with the judge, saying, like, hey, can we play this tape in court? And the opposing counsel, Emily, says, I don't want this played in court. And Will does want this played in court. And so Judge Abernathy, in his infinite wisdom, in his always needing to be in the middle of everything, says, okay, we'll come up with this compromise where we won't play the tape. We will just have the bailiff read it out loud. So instead, it loses all of its emotion. This is a very like
Mhm.
highly emotional tape. This woman has lost her child, doesn't know where her child is looking for help. And you have this bailiff saying, oh no, where did she go?
Yeah, and I mean we get to hear the tape in the kind of Alicia family segment. So she's at her like dining room table listening to the tape, so we get to hear it. And it was such an interesting parallel to see like you said, to hear the emotion of the tape and then just to hear it read aloud by this like schlubby, just normal guy out in the middle of court. So it definitely was a win for the defense in that moment.
Yes. And Kalinda continues to do some research into Duke and says that she gets or he gets a lot of information from anonymous sources on the internet. Gee, I don't know any anonymous sources on the internet. Like, it's a big part of being on the internet, and they decide to put Duke on the stand, and this is where it gets to some interesting conversation because Duke claims that he is a commentator, not a journalist. And so he only has to convince himself that he is right and in the truth. But then later on, they're bringing up the fact that, well, he states that Tim's wife had an abortion before she died. And so they're asking, where did you get that information? He says, I have my sources. And they're like, well, you have to name your sources. And he's like, no, I'm a journalist. And Emily comes in and says, according to the Shield law, we don't have to reveal our sources. And this kind of again puts Judge Abernathy in this really interesting space because even Diane is citing US versus Scooter Libby, which was a whole thing back in the day about how if journalists need to name their sources, it had to do with like outing an FBI agent. And there's a lot of details that I do not have at the top of my brain, but feel free to Google it if you need to be remembered of that time. And
Yeah.
that's like a conservative state. So Judge Abernathy again is in this place of like, what do I do? And he actually says, I have to defend the First Amendment, so he doesn't have to reveal his sources. And I thought this was an interesting conversation.
Well, and it's so funny how Abernathy kind of comes out of his judge like role for a minute. He's like, Diane, like, how are you supporting this? This isn't your part of
Bizarre.
your this isn't a part of your politics. And Diane's like, well, I'm just talking about the president. I'm not talking about like how I feel about it. So and so the whole protecting sources thing is so interesting. I don't know the year of the Scooter Libby, but I think it definitely had a impact on like television because you would see these
Mm-hmm.
shows that would be like, I can't reveal my sources. I think that's probably where all that stemmed from was the whole Scooter Libby case. Very, and this is just my weird, like, nostalgic brain. I remember a specific episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show where they literally put her in prison because she did not reveal her sources,
Yeah.
and she had like to spend a night in
Yeah.
prison. Like just a very like Nick at Night
Yeah.
recall brain of mine. So like, it was definitely a big thing back in the day, and it rears its head here. Whereas like, and it's so funny because typically this would be like a classic Will or Diane mess around where they have cornered someone into saying something that they can use against them like later. And like, oh, so you just said that you're not a journalist, so you are free to tell us who your source was because you're not a journalist. So they're not your sources aren't protected by you being a journalist. And of course, like I said, Abernathy has to kind of fence straddle and says, he's not going to make Duke name his sources.
Yes. For background, the Scooter Libby case was in 2007. So this is recent history. So the
Oh,
people in
well
the
after the
show.
Mary Tyler Moore thing.
No, but I mean, like, but the
It's been a
concept, it's
thing
been a thing
for a long time.
forever, like ever since there was journalism, like even like during the Civil War there was talk about whether reporters need to reveal their sources and things like that. So it's always been a thing. But the case itself was in 2007. So when it comes to the show, knowing like the show's knowledge of history, they weren't too far
Mm.
behind from that. I also think it shows how involved Abernathy can get as someone who aligns more with Judge Abernathy's morals and values. It is very uncomfortable to see him basically, I don't know, like legislating from the bench a little bit here. He is not necessarily like, like, and this is something that we talk about in the legal system today. Like this is and I think it's just really interesting to see this small example. I don't want to say a small example because it had a big impact on the case, but see this example of a judge having to putting the judge in a position to make this type of decision where the impact is far greater than I think he even intended.
Yeah, and I think you talk about can a human being be impartial and separate their values and morals
Yep.
from a just a case that's that is not about them or themselves. And like listen, as we talk about things that happened back 14 years ago still happening now in a very very higher court of law. Like, will your values, views, and morals impact you on how you decide things for other people, for the
For the
world,
world.
for a nation?
Yeah.
So it's a very heavy topic where can you as a human being separate yourself from the issue? And I think honestly more often than not, I think it's Oh no.
Yeah, yeah. I just think it's so interesting that like I don't think I would have picked up on that in 2010 when I first watched it,
Yeah.
but watching it
But
now I can easily see.
Abernathy, yeah, Abernathy is trying to tell us in such an extreme way. Yes, I can separate myself from the issues, and just by him saying that and trying to prove that means he is affecting
Right,
the outcome because of his morals and values because he's trying so hard to overcorrect.
right,
So that's another interesting view of that same argument.
right. Exactly. Okay, so last time we were in the courtroom, just to remind everyone, Duke had said that Tim's wife had had an abortion prior to getting
Or tried to
or
get
tried to
one.
get an abortion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think his argument in that moment is that
She didn't
Cheryl, which was her name,
yeah.
didn't want her daughter, so that's why Cheryl killed her daughter because she never wanted the daughter because she tried to get a late term abortion. So I think that's his chain of like why this makes sense that she murdered her daughter.
Right. And he is using the pressure of his citizen journalist team, groupies, everyone, and trying to put pressure on the firm itself. Like he wants to be done with this case. So he's not only putting pressure in the courtroom, he's putting pressure outside of the courtroom and basically has on his show, like saying, I'm going to have my citizen journalists, which isn't a thing, but citizen journalists look
Mhm.
into the firm and see what they can dig up on the firm. So that's going on at the same time that Kalinda decides to go to the family planning clinic. And that's where she finds out that someone who is doing probation at the clinic knew about Cheryl's visit to the family planning clinic, does not know the outcome of it, but just knew that she was there. And that person, Reagan, sent a email to Duke and basically said, hey, this lady came in for an abortion, and this is the information that Duke used to make that assumption.
Yeah, and it was so interesting because Kalinda goes to visit the clinic, and the nurse that's there basically tells her, "No, everything was fine with Cheryl. She didn't care." But and the nurse that's there is like what we don't kind of see on screen. She's like, "But you know who I would go talk to? This crazy nurse that we used to have called Irene, who apparently." Was volunteering at the clinic to work off some community service time
Right.
she got for some reason. So already right there, probably a little sketchy. But basically, the nurse sends Kalinda over to this crazy bat lady Irene, who was probably just in the clinic spouting quotes from Duke Roscoe's show. So they're like, who probably did that? You need to go check out Irene. So yeah, that's kind of where Kalinda gets the idea to track Irene down. Of course, as Kalinda does, is very creative in how she gets Irene to spill her guts about what she
I
did.
wish I had the confidence of Kalinda to just say I was whoever I needed to be
Yeah,
that day. Like she just like walks in and says she's from this agency and needs this information. And I mean, I'd believe her. She comes in with enough confidence that who would question her?
yeah. And I mean, they put Irene on the stand
Yep.
and basically get her to admit that she sent in the tip to Duke, and as Irene tells Diane and tells us as the audience, well, listen, I emailed him back and
Yep.
told him I was just kidding around, and I think it was very interesting where Diane asked her, so why did you do this? And Irene says, "Well, I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to be a
Yes.
part of this big thing. I
Yes.
wanted to be part of Duke's world. I wanted," that is the mentality of a lot of these people, in the world, even today, in the world, a lot of times, that they go to these extreme measures because they want to be part of the show. They want to be part of history. They want to feel like they're part of this thing. It goes to show to like these people's thought process mentality and how far and how extreme they will go just to get close to this, this personality.
Well, and I think it also speaks to like how inaccessible community is because she just wanted to be part of something.
Yeah.
She wanted to feel like she belonged. And the easiest thing for her to do was to join a message board and make messages and send emails to Duke Roscoe. The easiest thing wasn't for her to go join the activity center down the street or join a stationery fest per se, or go to, like join some sort of other community that would have been accessible to her. Like this was the easiest way for her to fill that need for herself. I saw her as a very lonely person who wanted to be part of something, and this is, she was like, "Oh, I know that person. They came into the family planning clinic, so I can then be a part of it." And I think that a lot of us get sometimes pulled into that trap of just wanting to
Yeah.
be connected to something.
Yeah, it also shows the power of like these media personalities
Yes.
where people will do whatever they need to do, whether it's falsifying information to get close to these people. She probably envisioned herself as, you know, Duke is going to call her personally and be like, "Hey, you want to come on the show and talk about what you found or blah blah blah?"
Like,
But she didn't even get that. But yeah, it's like, what will you do to get close to these people that you admire? That these, these shows and these, podcasts that you listen to, where you're like, "What do I have to do to get close to this machine?" Like, as someone, I'll talk about like my personal history here. As someone that took upon themselves to like apply for a podcast thing to be part of a podcast community,
yeah.
as I did back in the day, to become a podcaster. Like I can semi relate, where it's just like, I want to be part of this thing. How do I do it? Luckily for me, there was a easy route to get there. They were asking for people, but it's like I didn't go, stalk Rob
It was
Cesternino
like,
and find his
where?
door and knock on his door like, hey, let me be a part of your network. But yeah, it's so, I can in some manner relate to that feeling of wanting to be part of something so bad. Now I wouldn't have gone to the lengths that Irene did, but it's just an interesting parallel that I see in myself.
Yeah, well, and the power of parasocial relationships, because she probably thought
Yeah.
like, I'm so special to Duke because I gave him this
Yeah.
information, so he's obviously going to call me, write me back, something like that. And when he didn't, that just made her send more messages, send more things
Yeah.
to be noticed. So yeah, there's a lot in this one little interaction happening here that I
Mhm.
think still rings true in 2024.
She was probably all giddy that she was up on the stand across from Duke
Yeah, I was like,
Roscoe,
oh,
e
hi, can
even
you
though she was
sign
admitting something bad.
my parking
Yeah.
validation? Can you like
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So after she's on the stand, the defense is not going to put anyone else on the stand. They're basically resting their case, which means this goes to the jury while the verdict is being figured out. Will is getting a phone call from the Scranton Police Department. I don't know how we got to
Oh.
Pennsylvania by now, but that they did find Jamie, the little girl, Tim's daughter. And this was a very, like, this was, I was like, oh, Will, you're not creepy right now. Like, you're being a
Well,
good, solid dude right now.
yeah, Will has multitudes, right? He can be a dirty dog in 1 minute, and then he can be this very soft spoken kind of nice guy in the next. When he said Scranton Police Department, I was like, let me guess, is someone named Michael Scott take this child?
He said, what was it? Tots. What did he had that like
Oh, Scott's
Scott's
Tots.
tots. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
so
it could
funny.
be.
Anytime I hear anything from Scranton, it's like The Office. Yeah, but yeah, it's like, well, I mean, we say Will's such a nice guy. Like, I mean, I feel like anyone, if they got that
In
information, would have
this
been like,
moment,
hey,
yes.
not your kid. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and he just delivers it in a nice way of saying, I got this phone call. It's looking good. Like he doesn't necessarily say they found your daughter. It was just like, it's
yeah,
looking good. Let's have some
yeah.
hope. And the verdict comes back in. And this is where I was like, oh boy, Abernathy.
Ooh, yeah.
So the verdict comes in and Abernathy does not agree with it. And because he feels like a guilty verdict for the defense would impact First Amendment rights across the board for everyone.
Mhm.
And I think, given the impact of the Scooter Libby case, given where we were in 2010, and even more so now in 2020, 24, it's a very hard place to be in. But he basically overrules the verdict and directs the verdict in favor of the defense. So Duke is not being held responsible for what happened to Tim's family. But at the same time, at this point, I don't know if it's not that Tim doesn't care, but he's
He's got
definitely
bigger fish to
okay.
fry.
A little bit
Yeah,
better than he was
he's
before.
got he's got bigger things to attend to worry about at the moment. I mean, as he said, part of his motivation for this was getting the word out more about his daughter because he felt like she was just missing, she wasn't murdered. So he got, and we didn't talk much about the fact that the way that, I think the kid's name was Jamie. I think the way Jamie was found was that Duke offered a one hundred
Yeah.
thousand dollar reward out of his own pocket because that's how much he believed that Jamie was dead and not just missing. And like the neighbors who took Jamie snitched on their neighbors for their $100,000 to get to report that Jamie was found. So that was an interesting little wrinkle of the case. So in an indirect way, Duke got Jamie home. So, which I'm
And
sure Duke doesn't give a rat's ass about. Which I'm sure he didn't. He didn't. I'm surprised he didn't tout it on his show afterwards. As like, I helped rescue a little
yeah.
girl. Like, you know. So I feel like that would have been part of the narrative if it had been spun in like today's
Oh, for
world.
sure.
Like, yeah. So very interesting twist on the case at the end there.
Yes. But Duke does keep his promise of revealing secrets about the firm to the entire world. Like, who really cares about this little firm in Chicago? You know what I mean? If I, because is this like a national thing? Like, I don't
In
know if I would want to know the secrets of a law firm in New York. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't
Well,
impact
listen,
my life.
in 2010, maybe
Maybe.
not.
Yeah.
In 2024, where something can, I mean, where the Hawk Tuah girl is all the
Fair.
rage, I think anything could catch on virally, where everyone is so concerned about other people's business. I think it would have possibly gone national for like a day or two. Like it would have at the very least been a TMZ article.
That's true. That's true. So he tells everyone, I forget the other two, like someone
Yeah, they were
was
no names,
something,
no one
something.
we had ever heard of.
But the bomb he drops at the end is that Diane Lockhart is the closeted lesbian at this firm. And we get our first, like, I think this is the first one. I think this is the first Diane Lockhart laugh, like, that we
Yeah,
really get in the
quite a
series.
hearty,
And I
yeah,
loved it so much. She's
quite
got
a
such
hearty
a good
chuckle.
laugh. Yeah,
Quite a hearty chuckle. But did you notice, like, and
I
it
did.
happened both times here, because in the first time Duke's talking about this, he does says, who was spent to something in rehab, who did this, who did that, and then he's like, who is the closeted lesbian? And when they're first talking about it, they pan to all the people that this could be, who had a 2 month stint in rehab. They like kind of pan over Kerry's face, like, could it be Kerry? And then as you get to closeted lesbian, they pan over Kalinda, and then at the very end, where Duke is revealing all his secrets, and like, and who is the closeted lesbian? Well, I can tell you. And Alicia and Kalinda are sitting side by
Yeah,
side, and
yeah.
Alicia kind of looks over at Kalinda like, is he about to say Kalinda? Like, I'm getting a vibe. I'm
Well,
getting
and
a vibe.
Kalinda's also like, am I about to be outed here? Like,
Yeah,
is this
yeah,
what's happening? But it's so great that he ends up saying Diane Lockhart, and
yeah. It just
because
proves how bullshit he is. Yeah.
yeah, it's so good. It's so good. So
So
that was good. What was going on with that case? Like I said, there was a lot in there, so we probably missed some details. But overall, I think it did a good job of talking about, like the First Amendment, the responsibility of a judge, the role of parasocial relationships and media, and how things are still covered today. So still a very relevant case, in my opinion.
yeah, 100%.
Meanwhile, while all this was happening, there was a whole other thing happening where we are introduced. I cannot believe it took this long into the series to get to know David Lee. David Lee is the firm's divorce attorney, and this is the first time we see him.
Bro, I honestly I thought that this was I thought we would get David later, actually. I thought he was more of a later stage introduction. So I was really pleasantly surprised that we got David here. Now, for those that aren't following, that haven't watched all of the Good Universe, David Lee is
He's one to
another
watch.
character that's he's definitely fun. He's a very sharp witted person, as you see here. So he's going to be a big part of the universe in coming seasons and coming times. They listen, as opposed to Julius Kane last episode, they gave him a true and proper introduction here.
Yeah.
He got his whole name and everything. So he's David Lee. He's a divorce lawyer, basically practices family law and all that. So I was very happy to finally be to see David Lee in his first appearance here, and he definitely didn't disappoint.
He comes in, he's got his phone Bluetooth piece in, he's on the phone asking, basically he's asking Alicia, or telling Alicia, hey, I need you for a meet and greet because we're the only department that makes money and my client asks for you, so you're going to have to come with me. We had talked about how Alicia does not like being put in this position earlier, but we do get to just see how David Lee is all about making the money and
Mm-hmm.
making his clients happy, which is, I mean, his
I mean, that's
job.
the aim of a lawyer. That's
Yeah.
the aim of a lawyer. Now let's talk, because I mean, listen, we love to flash back. The Bluetooth earpiece. I tried to find an old Bluetooth earpiece I had once upon a time. I
Mm.
couldn't find one. Were you a Bluetooth earpiece person?
I
You were not.
cannot. I could not. I cannot have multiple audio inputs happening at the same time. Like,
Well, it would have been multiple. It would have been one.
no,
It would
but
have
then I'd
been
hear
like,
the outside. Like, I
oh
wouldn't
yeah.
be able to, like, I could not be. He was having a full on conversation with the person on the phone while also having a conversation with Alicia. I could never do that. That is not
So are
something
you
I could
not
do.
a earbuds
I
person
am an
at the
earbuds
moment?
person, but I will be like, hold on, let me put on my headphones. And I put in my headphones and then I have the
You
conversation.
can't have you can't have two conversations at once.
No,
Basically, what you're saying.
no.
Well, now listen. We talk about the evolution of things, or we talk about the evolution of Bluetooth. The big bulky Bluetooth earphones, like David had on here, which was just such a novelty back in the day. Like it was a specific person at certain times. You
Oh,
could be like, that's a guy that has a Bluetooth ear set. It was a kind of all at once a show of status. It was also kind of a show of like, I'm kind of an a hole, like that will have a conversation in front of your face and just totally ignore
this is what
you.
I'm saying.
So, but I mean, now it's kind of like it's very commonplace now, right? It's a very like you could get earbuds for like $10 that have microphone and you can have a conversation, on your phone, just out and about. But in 2010, it was just like this big thing of like, oh my god, like there are no wires. He's having a conversation on his cellular
Well,
phone.
and
Oh my gosh.
he had a phone belt buckle. Like,
Oh yeah.
that's how he was carrying his phone. Like, there was never one without the other. It was always like, I'm going to tell people that I'm important because I have a Bluetooth in and my phone is clipped to my belt.
He definitely had a phone clip. That's 100% for sure. Now listen, I there was a time I had a phone clip, and I would be on the phone. I would twirl the clip because it was one of those things where you could twirl it. It was on like a pivot. I would twirl the phone clip while I was talking on the phone. It's just it's I just love seeing these 2010, 2009 just conventions coming back to my life and thinking about the evolution we've taken in these certain things. Because I mean, like I said, now it's so commonplace to have your earbuds in, talking on the phone while you're walking down the street or while you're doing anything.
Yeah.
So just to see that, it was so, because I mean, at this moment in time, this snapshot, it's like, yeah, David's kind of a hole because he's got this big old Bluetooth thing in, and he's having two conversations at once, being rude to both people that he's talking to.
Yeah, but you're right. Like, now it's so commonplace. I wouldn't think the person's rude, but I would be like,
Right.
"Hi." I like,
Yeah.
make sure you're talking to me. Yeah, so we're introduced to David Lee. David Lee's client is asking for Alicia for a very specific reason because we find out that Carla Browning, who is David's client, has a maiden name or has a married name of Childs.
Yeah, and the way they the
So,
way that the way that they revealed this was interesting, right? Because we talked about the Duke case, and Alicia is annoyed because she's getting pulled away from the Duke
mhm.
the Duke case on this dumb divorce case that David's pulled her into, and she's like so distracted in this divorce meeting because she's looking over to the other conference room about what's happening with the Duke stuff, that she's barely listening to this, like, to this woman talk about her husband. And she gets this like conversation of like, yeah, my husband is dangerous just like your
Yeah.
husband. She's like, wait, what are you talking about? And she's like, don't you know who my husband is? My husband is Glenn Childs. And it's like, whoa. It's like, okay, you now have my full undivided attention. Like I wasn't listening to you at first, but now you got my attention.
This is such a brilliant move by Carla. I was like,
Oh
A
yeah.
plus to
Carla's
you.
a G.
First,
Carla is a
yeah,
boss with a
yeah.
capital B.
Well,
Like that's who Alicia should be looking up to. Like that is who she should be patting herself after.
yeah, it was a brilliant move. Carla is played by Jessica Hetched, I think is how you say it. She played
Heck,
Gretchen
yeah.
in Breaking Bad and then Susan in Friends. So she's been around in some well-known roles, but here she's basically like, "Hey, Alicia, I need you to get what I want, and you should do the same. You should use me to get what you want." Which I thought was
Yeah,
a
this
great way to show women supporting women and what
yeah.
they needed to do.
She has no qualms in admitting, like, no, I am using you to get under my husband's skin and to get what I want. And if you're smart, you'll do the same thing.
Yes.
So, like, I was like, damn,
Yeah.
Carla coming in here like a mouse.
We went from like 0 to 60 in that situation so quickly.
Yeah.
Alicia goes to visit Peter in prison in this episode as well. And there's like, he's like, I'll come home. And Alicia goes, well, what does that look like? And his answer is, home looks like family. What does that even mean, Peter? I have no idea. And don't worry, we're not going to fall into bad habits because we know what the problem is and we're not going to go back there. Do
It's
you?
like, we?
What
We.
conversations are you having? Where has this been? I have no idea. So I'm very worried for Alicia in this conversation.
No, but it's like, we are not gonna fall back into
Yeah.
bad habits. You are the
Yeah.
bad habits, my friend. And he's just like, and they haven't had the big conversations about what life will
No,
look like. He's just like, yeah, I'm gonna come home. We're gonna,
it'll be great.
be family, right? And like, I mean, this is classic Peter, but not even taking Alicia's feelings or her wants into consideration. He's like, I'll come back. We're gonna share a bed.
Or
Cool.
his
Same
kids.
Yeah.
Like,
You know,
I know we
like,
had that one scene where Zach was all like, my dad's still super cool. And Grace is like, I don't really want to go by you as much. So, but once he gets home, it's going to be like, just like normal. Everything's going to be fine.
yeah.
So weird. Also weird is Glenn Childs just showing up in Alicia's office. Like, what?
Well,
And basically
that
intimidating her, saying, like, hey, I've sent envelopes to your house. There's more of that where that comes from. And first of all, Alicia has no idea what he's talking about, but does a great job calling security and getting him out of her office.
Bro, that was an intense
It was.
confrontation. He grabs her wrist at one point. He's like, "Get off of me!" As like the just like the I'm not gonna say that. Never mind. Just like she's just like, unhand me. It's
Yes.
like you said, call security. And I have to wonder, like, when Childs left that meeting after Alicia was so just like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about with envelopes and DVDs. I wonder if you called this person like, did you deliver that envelope I told you to deliver? Because I'm getting the vibe that she did not get those pictures that you sent that I
Send him
sent you to
again.
give her.
Send him again. Send more.
Like,
Send.
you got the right address, right? You put it in front of the right door, right? Because I'm thinking you might not have did what I told you to do.
Don't worry. Zach has you on
Oh yeah,
iPod camera.
let's go on his iPod Shuffle or whatever. No, the Nano. Sorry, the Shuffle didn't have a screen.
That's
It's the
great.
iPod Nano, which I didn't even know had a camera. But
Right. Right. Yeah. I'd completely forgotten. Grace had heard about the news of Will and Alicia from that Duke decided to spill earlier in the episode. And so she ends up having this conversation with Alicia, like, hey, are you getting a divorce? What's going on? And Alicia, again, is being very transparent and trying to be as providing and secure for her kids. At the same time, she asks Grace, hey, has anything been delivered to the house at all? And Grace is like, I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? What envelopes? What DVDs?
A bold face ass lie. Just lies straight to
Yes.
her mother's face. Shame, shame, shame.
And then in a move of pure, I mean, the guy's name is Childs. Okay. Like,
Very childish.
very childish. Glenn Childs decides, oh, okay, if your wife's going to be on my wife's divorce case, then I'm going to move you, Peter, from like not as intense security to general population in the prison because this is how we're going to play this game. And I thought it was funny because Peter was like, you wanted the job. Like, you got to like
Yeah.
deal with the pressure.
You gotta take the good, take the bad.
Yeah.
And there, in fact, you have a Vax of life, my guy. But it was like, I'm surprised that Charles didn't have Peter like shanked or something in general population. This didn't like go worse for Peter. He just had to spend some time with the low lives that he put in there.
Well, we haven't Orange is the New Black yet, and I don't think like. Well, we're close to that though. I mean, like this was still CBS.
Yeah, I mean, we got stuff like Oz.
That's
out
true.
there,
That's
you
true.
know?
That's true. So moves Peter into general population. Then Glenn and Carla and Alicia have this meeting where Carla is on offense and basically like saying any request that David does or that Glenn does not want to reach, Carla is just giving information. Like, oh, what about Triton Fields? What about this? And Glenn is like, stop talking. Meanwhile, David's in the back just eating his popcorn. Like,
Oh yeah, I mean,
loving
listen,
it.
like all of us would be that's probably where the popcorn eating meme came from. Which is like David just like oh my god, I gotta watch what happens here. Like, and she is just like you said, on offense, just backing him into a corner. Like, listen, if you don't give me exactly what I want, I'm going to spill all what I have to Alicia right here. So you better give me what I want. She basically
Yeah.
holds him up at gunpoint of like, give me what I want. It's like a robbery. And Alicia's like, I want a fair thing. I'd be like, I want all your assets. I want every single thing you ever had in my name by the end of tomorrow. Cause
You
she
got
has
12
got him.
hours or I'm going to tell
Yeah.
everything.
She's got him by the balls here. She has him. Like and
Love
he
it.
knows it.
Love
He
it.
knows it. He knows he's in deep trouble here. And see now this y'all, this is what you get. Do not be sharing all your, you know, all your the dirt you got on your opponents to your significant others, okay?
I mean, I don't know, Dr.
What
Phil, what type of information you're giving out
but
to
what
people.
but when does information even come up? Is he like bragging to his wife like I got all this info on
No, she
Peter you
found
wouldn't
stuff on the
believe.
computer. And I think like,
Oh, she was snooping around. That's what
well,
it is.
or just on like a family computer in 20, like this guy doesn't seem like he's very up on keeping things under. He's sending files to the house without no, like he doesn't think that his
Yeah.
kids are going to pick up on it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I feel like Glenn Childs, he doesn't know. And he also like he he's being outmaneuvered here, and we'll talk a little bit about it in the next episode too. Like he's out of his league. Like he's trying to play a
Mhm.
game that he doesn't know how to play. And I think specifically here with Carla, he has no idea what to do other than fold in
Yeah.
this situation. Alicia runs back to Peter and tells him the information about Triton Fields. Shady answer here by Peter. Like they're just like a development company that was doing
Yeah.
stuff out.
Well, no, but this here intimates that Glenn Childs is the one that was taking kickbacks from this development group. He's like, oh, he's like Triton Fields, eh?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
I'm just gonna put this in my armory, put this in my repertoire of information I'm gonna use against
File that
my
one
guy
away.
Glenn.
And then before Carla's last move in her
Oh,
swan song,
genius!
it's so
Yeah.
beautiful. She's asked to sign her dissolution of marriage agreement, which very smartly on Glenn Child's part, I will say, did include a confidentiality agreement, basically saying like
Mhm.
anything from our marriage you cannot tell anyone. And Carla knew enough that that would become true as soon as she signed it. So before she signed it, she goes, "Oh hey Alicia, my husband had your phone wires tapped. Okay, bye. Let me
Like,
sign it."
and it was just so theatrical. She like put the pen to the paper. She's like, before I do this, she made a whole show of it. She's like, by the way, my husband was tapping your phone line, so do with that what you will. Bye.
Well, and then she's like, good, done.
Yep.
Like,
Now I can say nothing else about it. Like, if I was Lisa, I'm like, wait. I'd take the pad from her, like before, like just like, hold it away from me before you sign this. Like, tell me more. How long was he having my phones? What information did he get? What exactly on Triton
how do you
Fields does
know
he have?
this?
Yeah, I'd taken the paper, just put it over her head, like you can't reach it, and just ask for more information. But she's like, nope, that's what I'm giving you, and then just sign the paper. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's such a G. I love
I was
Carla
like,
for this.
you should hire her. Like, she's
Yeah, that's
really
what
good at this.
you need to be doing more of this, Alicia. This
Yeah.
is what you need to be doing.
Yeah. You don't want to babysit. These are the moves. These are the moves to
Yeah,
make. So those are the two big things happening. Not a lot happening with the firm these days. I think feel like the power struggles there have kind of simmered down a little bit. But we had a very interesting case. We had some movement on Peter's case, and
the show
it's cooking.
balances pretty well.
Yeah,
The show balances like we'll have an episode with farm stuff, we'll have an episode with family stuff, we'll have an episode of just regular stuff. So it balances well by rotating what the main episode is about. So yeah, like listen. So for the pod, if you
yeah.
guys want to support us in any type of way, we have multiple fast, free ways that you can help us out depending on how you're listening to us. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please give us a 5-star rating, or you can also leave a written review. We've had a couple of you leave written reviews recently, and I want to shout those out.
Yes.
Let's see, I've got one from the username is frustrated 176598230.
Oh,
So interesting. It reads good wife newbie here. It says, I'm watching The Good Wife for the first time and first heard about this podcast from Jason Reed's appearances on the Rob Has Podcast Network. I am so glad that I did because he and Marissa do a great job with this watch along podcast. They
Aw.
don't spoil anything important for newbies like me, but they do give hints that the characters might evolve over the next several seasons. If you're considering trying this podcast, thank you so much, Frustrated. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate that shout out, that great review. Yeah, if you've heard me on the Rob Has Podcast Network, welcome. Because I wasn't a Big Brother podcast this past week,
Ooh.
and might get some new listeners from there. So if you're new from there, welcome to the pod. I do have another one. It's from TNNSBAW. It says, great podcast. It says, the host has such great and entertaining dynamic that I will listen to them discuss anything. But lucky for us, they decided to start a recap podcast about The Good Wife and the other shows within that universe. I haven't watched since the episodes initially aired, so it's fun listening to them talk about it. Before every episode started, I used to guess how long it would take before the title card appeared. Defo recommend the podcast. Thank you so much, TNN as a ball. Thanks for that great review. And listen, if you enjoyed our conversation about pens earlier in the episode, you say I'll listen to talk about anything. So we called your bluff on it. Did you enjoy the pen conversation earlier?
Well,
So yes,
also TNN, I too guess when the title card is going to come in the episode
yeah,
because it's either like really close or like 15 minutes in, and you never know
yes.
when it's going to show up. But yeah, also open to other topics if you want to hear us talk about something. Feel free to let us know. We'll see what we could do. I think we have more than pens that we can throw in here, but I love
Did you come
pens.
across
I
any
will
other
talk
good
about
post
pens all
notes?
the time.
Did you come across any good post-it notes? Any good stationery equipment? We can talk about staplers. We can
Yes.
talk about anything you saw there.
Yes.
If you want a dedicated stationery pod where Marissa tells you all about these stationery innovations that she saw at PenCon, at Stapler Fest, at whatever the heck, let us know. We'll get that right out to you. Or listen, any other shows you want to hear us talk about. We're open.
Yeah,
We're
we're
open for other
open.
things. Yeah, so those are two great reviews that we got recently from Apple Podcasts. Also, if you're listening on Spotify, you can also leave us a 5-star review there. Unfortunately, they don't do written reviews. But listen, I, for one, love written reviews. It really boosts my ego for like a good week or two. I'm just like, I feel great when I get a good review. So if you want to make me feel great, leave me a great review. So yeah, if you're on Apple, Spotify, or if you're watching us on YouTube, first of all, hi.
Hi.
Wave to you. You can also leave us a thumbs up down here, and also you can comment on those YouTube videos too. And we're always trolling those sections to see if there's any comments that we can respond to or anything like that. So a great way to interact with us, a great way to show us support and show us love through all of those different ways. Marissa,
Yeah.
where can the good people find you on the interwebs?
The good people can find me at It's Me, Marissa G, on Instagram and Threads. I'm posting, what did I post about today? Trader Joe's snacks. If you're interested in
Oh,
terms of like what I'm snacking on these days, or sometimes I post about my pens. You can check me out there or anything else that I'm up to. I will let you know there.
yeah, you need a good pen written review. Go to Marissa's feed.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Yeah, as far as where I can be found on Twitter at JAYR1085. I throw out my other podcast, things every now and then. There are things that pop up here and there. Still waiting on the new season Married at First Sight. So when that comes out, I'll be doing the Perfect Match podcast again when that comes out. But yeah, until then, Twitter is where you can find me. And also, of course, here is where you can find me as well. Can't wait to come back and talk about the next episode with you, Marissa. But until then, stay good.